thing. When we came to window as one of the menu items on the top of the Microsoft Office toolbar, window, how do we translate it into Hindi? Now, when I suggested that let us keep it khidki, people laughed at it. Then I said, no, let me do a little bit of research. I looked up the French version of Microsoft Office, and for window over there, they have used fenêtre. Fenêtre is window in French. And then I went to the German version, they call it fenestre. Now, fenestre in German is window. If it can be fenestre and fenêtre for window in German and French respectively, why not khidki in Hindi? Right. See, we need to drop that, being squeamish and being shy of ourselves. There's no need to deny ourselves. There's no need
That's the inferiority complex.
Yes, yes.
Namaste, everyone. I have with me a dear old friend, Ganesh Arnaal in Mumbai. He's been a friend. We are on the same path. He's helped me a lot for many, many years. And I just want to introduce his background. He's a chartered accountant, and he runs a small boutique investment bank. That's his professional, background. But his passion is in the Indian language computation, which we'll get into in detail. So the whole discussion today is how he has pioneered the use of artificial intelligence and computational theory to help Indian languages take on the onslaught and colonization of English by English, to create our true freedom and to have a renaissance of Bharatiya and Indian civilization. We need to recover our languages. And this is not just a simple matter of spoken English or spoken Sanskrit or being able to speak here and there. And it's not a simple matter of sending out tweets in your language and so forth. It's a lot more complex. And I want everyone to pay attention and understand why what the work he's done is so important, because unless you can bring professions like medicine, engineering, nursing into the local language and have training and certification in those local languages for which you need textbooks, unless you can do that, the professions will remain in English. And if people have to study English in order to get a job, then the native language will be just like an extracurricular activity, but not mainstream. To make the language mainstream like it is in China, their language, France, Russia, Japan, etc., we have to do a lot more than what we have been doing. And he's a pioneer. And so I'm very proud to have such a friend. So welcome to the show, Ganesh.
Namaste, Rajiv ji. Good, and thank you for having me.
And so can you give a little background on what is meant by Indian language computing? And then there are certain jargon terms like BBS, Office, and translation engine. So maybe we want to start by establishing some vocabulary.
Yes. Before I explain what is Indian language computing, I'd like to set the social context. In India, over the last 30 to 40 years, successive governments have been trying to bridge what they call the digital divide. Digital divide because those of us who have been able to use the computers and have benefited from computers have really gone far ahead of the others in terms of economic success. Started giving some computers for free, but that did not succeed. In fact, famously, Uttar Pradesh governments had tried under Samajwadi Party as well. It is not just that BJP is the only one who has tried. Other parties have also tried. They've tried to give computers to school children, but the problem there is that they need to buy those licenses from Microsoft. That is very expensive, so they don't put up. They just put some basic stuff in a computer and send it out. Now the problem is that Besides that, even if someone were to take a Microsoft Office, that is available only in English. 80% of Indians do not know English or are not conversant or comfortable in English. Therefore, you have a situation where government spent crores of rupees, gave computers to youngsters in the hope that they would be able to bridge the digital divide. It did not happen. Then came the mobile revolution. I would not say in that sequence, it is an overlap. The mobile revolution, initially the feature phones, and then now the smartphones. The government has tried to spend a lot on broadband. This government under Modi ji has spent a lot of money on, putting the fiber across the country and tried to improve the broadband, which they have done. But then now almost everyone has at least a feature phone, and many of them have smartphones. But what do they do with it? They basically use these mobiles only to watch video or to make some payments on GPay or buy some tickets from IRCTC. They don't really generate or develop content because they've not been trained. So much as the governments have tried to create, or break the digital divide, they've not been able to do so. The main problem is that unless you break the language barrier, you're not going to break the digital divide. The digital divide will go when the language barrier is broken. So actually, I would say the language is the new caste in India. The English knowing people are one caste, and the non-English knowing people are the other caste.
So this is where I want to add. So this has been the message. In fact, in my latest book, Snakes in the Ganga, I talk about a digital caste system. In my previous book called Artificial Intelligence, on many books, this has been a constant theme that, people talk. And in fact, a recent book that's coming out is Varna Jati Caste. The whole idea there is we are saying that the old caste is not the operational caste. The caste that operates now is things like who speaks English with the American accent is a higher caste than a person speaking Indian with a local accent. And the person who speaks broken English is even lower caste, and the person who doesn't speak any English at all is the lowest caste. So if you want to talk about who are the outcast from the professional arena are people who don't speak English. They are the outcasts. They are the new Dalits as far as professions are concerned. So we also have to take that on. The Western scholars don't want to blame English as the cause of the caste system, but it is. Because if you blame English as the cause of the caste system, then nobody will fund them. All these Western funding sources will go away. So I really think that this is a very important to decolonize and to do away with caste abuse. You have to revalorize and reaffirm local languages, not just for singing, dancing, culture, but also for jobs.
Absolutely.
So you're on the right track.
Yeah. So we this is the social context for Indian language computing. Now, why do our people not use computers? Because the software is in English. So we need software available, the basic software like Microsoft Office or Adobe PageMaker or InDesign or AutoCAD. These are the basic tools which are used these days by people to earn a living. Now, if you go to France, if you go to Germany, if you go to South Korea, small countries like Hungary, they have all these software available in their own language. Here we are, 500 million plus people speaking Hindi. That is the third or the fourth largest linguistic group in the world. And they do not have software in their own language. Now, there's another reason why the software companies in India and the software companies from US, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, etc., have not really invested in Indian languages because, say, when you say 20% of India that is around 280 million people at 140 crores population. You have a population which is larger than the combined population of UK, Germany, and France. So that is the kind of market that they have with just 20% of India. And they have done saturation marketing over there, and they're quite happy with what they have achieved. And this 20% is also happy because India has become a superpower in software, in information technology. So everybody thinks all is fine. Now, but then we keep talking about the the poor people not able to get jobs. They don't get jobs because they don't compute. So we need to compute in Indian languages. So I coined the term Indian language computing, and I formed a company which is a literal translation of Indian language computing. Bharat Bhasha is Indian language. Sanganak is computer, and Sanganan is computing. Therefore, we call our company Bharat Bhasha Sanganan Technology LLP. So, please.
No, this is excellent. This is excellent. So now I want to give you a little my involvement, and then want you to respond to it. So many years ago in Bangkok, they had this World Sanskrit Congress, and I created a big controversy when I said that we have to re-Sanskritize India and the Western world also, because Sanskrit has a lot to offer. And there are this idea of Sanskrit non-translatables. And I talked about the geopolitics, how the geopolitics has become, from the time of Macaulay, desanskritizing the Indian education meant that the onslaught of English came. That's how it happened. So then, Sankrant Sanu took this on, and he took my article and turned it into a book, which is a popular book on the revival of Sanskrit and Indian languages. I think that you've taken it further. I want people to know that, because, his movement didn't consider the use of Indian languages in professions. That was the missing point. And I tried to convince him. I said, you go into the ministry and they'll say, okay, teach in Hindi, but teach what? I mean, they'll teach basic stuff. But you want to teach engineering in Hindi. You want to teach computer science, programming. You want to teach nursing and medicine and law, all those things, because that's where the jobs are. So that's, I think, your forte. So tell us about the use of Indian languages in professions, and what's the missing link in terms of textbooks?
Yeah. Now, I will deal with it in two parts. One will be, the first part would be about BBS Office, which is a Hindi user interface of OpenOffice. OpenOffice, as we all know, is an open source office productivity suite similar to Microsoft Office, but it is available for free.
So tell us what BBS stands for.
Yeah, BBS is the short form of Bharat Bhasha Sanganan.
Okay.
So we called it BBS Hindi Office.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when we started doing that, our inspiration was that, other countries, when you go to China, they have office in Chinese. In Korea, they have office in Korean. But here we do not have, office in English. Then we have it only in English. I'm sorry, we don't have it in Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, and so on and so forth. So we set about creating a user interface in Hindi. When we started doing that, before that, I must tell you that, have you ever seen a non-English speaking person in India being a finance manager? Because he cannot use Excel. He cannot use Excel.
Yeah. So I want to add something here. To add something here. See, over the last 20 years, when I say about this, people say, no, I can type in Hindi. Yeah. I can type in Hindi. I want to differentiate that from what he's saying. You can introduce Hindi content, but the commands are in English.
Yeah.
The command like save, file, open, close,
Yes.
those
Yes.
are in English.
Yeah.
So when you say save, what does it mean? Is it Jesus saving you? Is that save? Or does it save your bank account and save
Yeah.
your money? What does save mean? The
Yes.
idea that save of a file is sort of alien to the Hindi speaker. He needs a different word. He needs not a literal translation of the word save, but he needs a word that makes sense to him, a different
Absolutely.
in his idiom. So tell us about
Absolutely.
how, when you say user interface, you mean commands.
Yes.
You mean
I'll
all
tell
the
you.
commands. Yeah.
I'll tell you about the menu. The top menu will say when you have a file, there'll be Sanchika over there. Sanchika is file. Then edit is Sampadan. Tools are Upakaran, and so on and so forth. Now, here is an interesting thing. When we came to window as one of the menu items on the top of the Microsoft Office toolbar, window, how do we translate it into Hindi? Now, when I suggested that let us keep it khidki, people laughed at it. Then I said, no, let me do a little bit of research. I looked up the French version of Microsoft Office, and for window over there, they have used fenêtre. Fenêtre is window in French. And then I went to the German version. They call it Fenester. Now, Fenester in German is window. If it can be Fenester and Fenêtre for window in German and French respectively, why not khidki in Hindi? Right. See, we need to drop that, being squeamish and being shy of ourselves. There's no need to deny ourselves. There's no need
That's the inferiority complex.
Yes, yes. And out of that, we go into self-denial. That is what we seek to remove. And further down, when you open all those various files, see, when you click on file, you get nai for new file, kholo for open, and so on and so forth. They're all commands. Like, we tried our best. See, the beauty of personal computing, especially the way after GUI, that is user interfaces started coming, we treat the computer as our servant. We issue commands. You can only command a servant. You can't command anybody else. So the romance of a personal computer, we try to capture when we put together the Hindi version. So here also, aapka naukar hai, aapka kaam karega. So kholo is what you say, not kholiye, and no respect, nothing. It just capture the romance which I experienced way back in the early 90s when I bought my first computer. I wanted to translate and make that with that romance become available to a Hindi user as well.
So instead of being a gulam of English, where I am the subordinate, I am now the master because I am commanding the computer. Otherwise, computer is intimidating me. This computer is a boss because he comes from some Videshi place, Angreziyat. I'm not Angreziyat fellow. And so I'm subservient to the computer. I have to look up to the computer. What you have done is turn the power equation. And what you're saying is that I, the Hindi speaker, I'm going to command this machine. This is my servant. It's a cognitive shift from being a slave to being the master. And that has a huge consequence to the confidence level of our masses.
Exactly. Now, the interesting anecdote here is in the famous program Kaun Banega Crorepati, Amitabh Bachchan calls the computer G. I'm not criticizing Amitabh. He must be doing it for fun or jest. But then that has caught on a lot, computer G. Whereas here we are saying, we are asking the computer to do this, kholo, do this, do that. Anyway, now coming to, there are many problems that our people have faced. Can I give you a little bit of the background or the history of development of computing in India to give the context?
Please do.
Yeah. See, way back in 1981, when IBM came up with the idea of uh, a personal computer, they adopted the keyboard that they used in their typewriters, the same layout they decided to adopt for their computers, for the keyboard for their computers. Once they did that, and their ambitions being IBM was global, they wrote to every single government across the globe requesting them to either fit their language and their characters within the keyboard, that is the English keyboard, which is called the QWERTY keyboard, or if they so desire, they could design their own keyboards, and the software, the underlying software, they would then package it as part of the operating system that they would be putting in every computer, every personal computer. This is what they wrote to all the governments. And in 1984, when Rajiv Gandhi became the prime minister and he was very interested in introducing computers, he appointed Sam Pitroda to, he was tasked with the job of, making India a computer literate country. He did good work in the sense that he laid the foundation for our IT industry, which has taken off in the English side of computing. But for Hindi and others, he made some grave blunders, which have cost us dearly. One is that see, now you may have seen Hindi typewriters of Godrej and Remington Rand in the past. You would have seen
Sure.
Hindi typewriters.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Now, those typewriters had a certain layout in which the letters were set, which letter would appear on pressing which key. Now, Sam Pitroda changed that, and he created a new keyboard layout, which he called Indian script, which in short is called InScript. And he created a layout and sent it to IBM. Now, this turned out to be a blunder because he should just have adopted the Hindi typewriter keyboard layout. He created a new layout without consulting the users whether they would be happy to change over from a certain way of typing onto another way of typing. He tried to make it phonetic. The English knowing person's arrogance, or shall we say ignorance, that he wants to fashion the Hindi speaking people after his own image, after his own English image. So it was a disaster. The second problem that happened was that till 1996, Indian languages did not have a digital expression, digital characters. Characters are not digital. They were non-Unicode. Unicode came up in 1996. So the first 15 years of computing in India, we just did not have digital fonts and digital characters. So what happened was our people started using the computer as a typewriter. There are companies like Krutidev and others who created their own proprietary typing systems, which was sold as a software or as a dongle, which you could attach to the USB of the computer, and you could start typing and it would type. But then that was the format of, or rather the layout was similar to the typewriter, which the typists were used to. But then while it was typist friendly in terms of which key would produce which character, but it was very bad in the sense that those were non-digital fonts. So we have from 1981 till 1996, not a single document that was created was machine readable. Even today, most of the fonts that are used are not machine readable. You would have experienced, our viewers would have experienced that, they would have received files in Hindi and it doesn't open in their machine. Have you had such an experience, Rajivji?
Yeah. In fact, worse than that, one of my books was translated to Hindi, and this guy didn't know all these things. After translating the whole book, typing up the whole thing, the publisher said we can't publish this because this is not a font that we can manipulate and use and change the size and layout and whatnot. We can't. It's not computer manipulative.
Exactly.
It cannot be computer processed.
Exactly.
It's static. It's fixed.
Yes.
And so you can just, all
images.
you can do is what you got. You cannot transform anything out of it.
No, you can't. So those are images. Those are not stored in binary code.
Right.
So as a result, what happens is that if you receive a file and it has been, composed in a particular font, and that font you do not have, then it will not open. It will show as garbage. So then you request the sender to give you that font, and then you install it. An average user in English never has to install any font. So you cannot expect a Hindi user to be installing fonts. So what did they do? They stopped using it. They said, send me a PDF. So you send a PDF. Now, when I receive a PDF and I want to collaborate with you, I need to print out that PDF, make changes physically, and then scan it and send it back to you. Whereas if it was a machine readable font, we could collaborate just as we do in English. This is a problem faced by India even today.
Right.
Though Microsoft offers just two fonts in Hindi, which are being used by government agencies. So it's terrible state of affairs as far as word processing is concerned. We decided to change that. So we created many digital fonts. And then I went and showed it to the typists, who sit outside the railway station near Mumbai railway station, suburban railway stations. So the guy would make me sit on a small stool in a dingy area, and if a customer came, he would say, "Saab, aap jara side mein hato, mera dhanda ka samay hai." So I would wait till such time that the customer would go away and again sit on that rickety stool and show him keep my laptop on my lap literally and show him So then they said, "Sir, now you've done a good job. You got fonts which are digital. But will it type the way I want?" At that time, the problem was there's only InScript. I looked all across whether I could manipulate in such a way that we use the Kritidev layout and produce digital font. We were not able to do that. Then we created a keyboard which has the same layout as the typists are used to, but it produces digital fonts, digital characters. So that was one big fight we had in word processing.
Excellent.
If you want to have, and if you have any questions on this, otherwise,
I think it's going very well. So now should we go on to what is? So you explained BBS Office. So what about translation engine, which is another?
No, we'll come to that. One more point I want to make in the spreadsheet. Now you have all the functions is equal to sum, and then you give the range, and it gives you it adds and then the total and gives you, or you do is equal to average, and you give the range, it gives the average, and so on and forth. Trigonometric functions, all of it, about 480, 500 functions, logical functions, mathematical functions, statistical functions, and so on and so forth are available in Excel. But we do not have, so now I said all these terms were known to us, known to our people from before. Here is where, when I was looking for the terms and terminology, we hit upon the Council for Scientific and Technical Terminology, which is an institution under the Ministry of Education, which was started way back in 1964 by Lal Bahadur Shastri by asking Dr. D.S. Khotari, who happens to be the grandfather of Deepika Kothari. Our mutual friend Deepika, her grandfather, he was the one who started the Commission for Scientific and Technical Terminology. Lal Bahadur Shastri told him that we need textbooks and we need to be able to, learn and teach in Hindi and other Indian languages. So let us create the technical terms. They didn't have to create. Rajivji, believe me, when I was looking at all those terms, every single term in statistics, every single term in mathematics, every single term in philosophy, every single term in trigonometry was already known to us. We had our own terms. And those dictionaries are so mind-blowing that the definitions of those, say, for example, cosine is coggia. The definition of cosine, coggia, is so robust and so, good. The intellectual depth and thoroughness is outstanding. So no other country, I dare say, would have had such an easy path should they have chosen to have computing in their own languages. We have all the terminology and yet we let it go. So to cut the point short, what we did was we adopted all those terms and then we created, say, for example, yog is sum. Sum is yog. So is equal to yog, and then you give the range and it'll give you the answer. Is equal to ausat and it'll give you the answer. So compute now you can really have a finance manager who does not know Hindi. He can draw up the balance sheet. He can draw up the P&L statement. Everything.
Yeah, you mean he doesn't know English?
He doesn't know English. Yes.
Yeah. Good. So now let me ask you this: as a chartered accountant, when you become a CA, all your exams and all your textbooks are in English.
Yes.
So how do you solve that problem?
Yes. Now, all technical books need to be translated into Indian languages. Now, higher learning has to happen in Indian languages. Now, I have never been interested in translating books which are in literature, which are in the domain of literature, because literature does not create jobs, whereas STEM creates jobs, law creates jobs, accountancy creates jobs. We are interested in job creating technologies. So when I met Ganesh Ramakrishnan, professor at IIT Computer Science Department at IIT Bombay, way back in, I knew him from before, but I met him specifically for this in 2013 and convinced him, and I funded the project initially to start using machine translation and artificial intelligence to create a translation engine which would translate textbooks in English from English to Hindi and then on to other Indian languages.
Okay, so so is this translation engine using Sanskrit as a canonical form? Because in computational linguistics, they learned a lot from Ashtadhyayi, Panini's, and they learned that this particular grammar was so robust that in automatic translations, like now Google has and Facebook has and Microsoft have all these products where you speak in one language, it speaks out in the other language. But what people don't know is that this whole AI-based language translation started out as computational linguistics. And in computational linguistics, they used to hire a lot of Sanskrit experts like Professor Jha in Delhi University, good friend of mine from JNU. They used to hire all these people who knew English and who knew Sanskrit grammar, pick their brain in order to figure out how Panini works, and then come up with this computational linguistics. And then they moved that foundation, they moved it to AI. So I think and I used to give talks on this. I used to say that the day will come when, you won't know that there is Sanskrit inside, that there is Sanskrit grammar hidden inside this engine, but that's how it's being made. Indians are being hired at that time, I said, as coolies to do all the work for the American companies, and they'll own the intellectual property. And that's exactly what has happened. Most of us, we are buying this made in USA technology back to India, paying them royalties, not realizing that they don't even give credit to the fact that this came from using Indian grammar and Indian brains to do all this work. but the owners of the R&D and the technology and all this product development were American companies. So this is a kind of a shame, but I'm glad that you are now trying to do something to bring it right back.
True. So as of now, we are not using Sanskrit. We are using Hindi to English. I mean, English to Hindi, English to Kannada, English to Marathi, and so on and so forth. But we are in the process of developing. IIT Bombay is working with other institutions as well, where we are trying to use Sanskrit in the canonical form as an interlingua, because 80% of all words in all Indian languages have come from Sanskrit, especially the technical terms. So the idea is that we are in the process of creating an interlingua where the books get translated into Sanskrit, and then straight from Sanskrit, it moves into various languages. Only we need to handle the exceptions that each language would have. Otherwise, 80% would automatically, that is the step 2. We are not there, we will be there.
Yeah, not only the words, but the structure of the grammar.
Yeah. The beauty is that almost all the languages in India follow the same structure as Sanskrit. So,
and in fact, most European languages.
Yes, so that's not a problem. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
That really makes things easy.
So, how much of this intellectual property is Indian, and how to what extent is it dependent on the platforms of people like Microsoft for it to function?
It is 100% Indian.
Okay.
It's 100% Indian. We are completely independent of any American or any foreign technology.
But the person would have to give a license fee to get Windows and Office, or not?
No, Windows that he anyway, when he buys a computer, it comes packed with Windows. So our software will work either on Windows or on Ubuntu. It can work on anything.
So if somebody uses it on Windows, besides the Office commands and Excel, will the Windows commands also be in the local language?
Yes, but in fact, everything. Now we are going back to BBS Hindi Office, or are we talking about translation engine?
No. Let's say we're talking about BBS, not Office, but BBS operating system.
No, BBS does not have an operating system. We do not have.
Okay.
In fact, interestingly, there is a company which is called, the Government of India has worked with one of the institutions and come up with Bharat OS for mobile computing, something similar to Android. And there is work underway to have an operating system which in India with Indian technology. So that may happen sooner rather than later. But at this point of time, we cannot really be choosing because we are running against time. The narrative is that a common man, an auto rickshaw driver or a housemaid thinks that if he or she were to send her children to English medium schools, then their children will be as prosperous as those who are already speaking English. They think it is as simple as that.
Yeah, English is the passport to middle class.
Yes, and therefore we cannot be. If people are using their Windows machine, so be it. The software will open in Indian languages. So to that extent, at least we are reducing the importance. We are not yet there on the operating system level. We are there on the applications that work on the operating system as of now. But with Bharat OS coming up, I think we'll have an operating system. If we can have an Android for a mobile phone, soon enough we can have a Indian language operating system, which will work for computers as well.
Okay, so back to the whole translation issue. So where are you at in terms of have you picked a particular profession and said, okay, this is the target date by which all the books will be, technical books will be in that profession, in that language?
Yeah. Good question. For the last 7 to 8 years, it was only me and Ganesh Ramakrishnan and his team. We used to work away. We made many mistakes because technology would keep changing. In the last 7 to 8 years, technology has shifted so many times, and then we learn, we make mistakes, and so on and so forth, and we have come to a certain stage. Suddenly what happened was, a couple of years back, when the new education policy was announced, policy support is now available, in the sense that the Prime Minister and the Home Minister have been pushing for education in Indian languages, higher education in Indian languages. Now, this year, they have started offering engineering and medicine in Indian languages. So, our team at Project Udan is working with AICTE, All India Council for Technical Education. They are using our software, where that is our translation engine, where we are handholding 12 teams of theirs in 12 languages to produce the first and the second year engineering books. Now, we are working at present on about 60 titles in 12 languages. That will be about 720 books in the next 2 to 3 months. It should be out.
Okay. So will a person be able to, besides just the first or second year, because he has to finish his degree? I mean, then you cannot say, okay, you're done with 1 or 2 years, now you go back to English. When will a stage come when a person will be able to get and finish an engineering degree in his native language?
Yeah. Now, we started with the first and second year because you have to start from the first year. So by the time those in the first and the second year move to the third and the fourth year, before that, the entire curriculum will be available in the next 12 to 18 months. The entire engineering curriculum would be available in Hindi and 11 other languages.
Excellent. So now when that happens, the books are available. Now you need teachers.
Yes.
And now you need engineering colleges to adopt that.
Yes.
And now you need employers who are not going to conduct the interview in English, but going to test the guy in his own language.
Yes. It's now this is where we have fixed the supply side by we have solved the supply side problem. Now we are able to translate in 1/6 the time that it would take if you were to translate manually. So, and going forward, I'm sure our speeds will improve, and we can, virtually over the next 10 years, our idea is to, fix the gap in technology learning between over the last 250 years after Macaulay stopped our pathshalas. So the idea is that over the next 10 years, we should be able to bridge the gap of this knowledge divide. That is the goal. But in the meanwhile, the supply side problem has been fixed. How do we fix the demand? That is a social problem. And when I met the Minister of Education, Dharmendra Pradhan, he also expressed this. He said, now we have to work to getting people to send their children to colleges to learn in Hindi and other languages. Now, here we are having a problem also. Now, when we are trying to finance this project, now that it has moved out of IIT, and they are licensing their know-how to my company, and then our company would be taking it up as a professional on a commercial basis, because you need to make money. And anyway, IIT cannot be doing the work of publishing books and selling books. So this company needs to raise money. We have a problem because we have fixed the supply side. I'm an investment banker. I cannot put a business plan in place where I can put together a business model which says next year we will sell so many books in Hindi of engineering, and so much of medicine books, and so many law books in Hindi and Tamil, and so on and so forth. We are not in a position to do that. So we are waiting, and we are hopeful that the government of India would be able to fix that problem by some form of affirmative action, and also, education and telling people and speaking to people.
So here I want to discuss what we talked about privately when we talked about this earlier. And I proposed this idea to you at that time. And it's in my forthcoming book on Varna, Jati, Caste. One of the remedies I'm proposing is that instead of limiting to quota system based on caste, we should have a quota system also based on language. So
Absolutely.
What if the government were to say that those employers who get somebody in certain classifications where engineering education is available, or nursing or medical, whatever, if the education is available in a local language and you hire these people, there's a certain subsidy, we'll pay half the salary, something like that.
Yes.
The government, just like government is saying, okay, we'll give some incentive, tax incentive or quota incentive or whatever, or certainly in government owned jobs, we will give incentive to people of lower caste to help them out. And we've been doing it for 75 years, and it's a successful program in many ways. And I'm glad, because we need to help those people. The same way, why not say that the government is going to have a language policy that says hire non-English speaking people and we will subsidize the salary. So, that will create the demand side, because then the employer will say, okay, if I have 1,000 jobs open for something, why don't I hire 100 of them in Hindi or Marathi or whatever? Because, government will help me. So I think this quota system for languages, and I was very surprised. I put out a poll on my Twitter saying, do you think that quotas for languages should be as important as quotas for caste in order to, decolonize English the way you want to remove caste privilege? And I thought that this will be like some of my polls, we get 95% wanting it. The majority said yes, but it was not an overwhelming majority. I was very surprised. So I don't know what the restriction, what is resisting the minds of our middle class. And these are all people who are otherwise very patriotic. What do you think blocks the Indian government? Is it just lack of imagination? Because I'm going to launch my Varna, Jati, Caste book in HRD, the Indian Council of Social Sciences Research. I'm going to talk about it in universities. I'm going to launch it in the World Public Fair. And when people say, okay, you're criticizing the bias of the West against our social structure and blaming us every time they have a chance, blaming our caste system and all that, but what's your solution? I'm going to put this up. I'm going to say that if you really think about it, the modern caste system is based on English. And if you want to get rid of this modern caste system, the language caste system, you have to have quotas for local languages. Now, why hasn't this, I've tried this, I've been talking to it. Why hasn't this, in your opinion, succeeded? Talk to people in Delhi, various places. It hasn't caught on. It's like maybe it's too controversial. People don't want to talk about it.
No, I think slightly differently about this. Till we created the supply that now it is possible to learn and teach in Indian languages. Higher education is possible through Indian languages. There was no point in expecting them to create a quota. Now that the supply side has been fixed, I'm sure the government will come up with a quota, and an affirmative action based on language would be most welcome. And instead of a coercion, like you suggested, if they can come up with an incentive-based model.
No, I'm talking about incentive. I'm talking about incentive in the sense, not coercion. I'm talking about government.
Like you mentioned, yes.
Government should give an incentive. Government should give a tax with a subsidy. Maybe they can give a part of the salary. Maybe they can say a certain part of the salary of anybody who's non-English speaking that you hire in these professions, A, B, C, D, in the list of professions, so will be paid by the government. So the people will get employees cheaper because the government will subsidize. It'll be an incentive.
Yes. The one other thing that can happen, which can accelerate the process, is, the vocations. Those are the plumbers, the electricians, the masons, the artisans, and small shopkeepers, and so on and so forth. they do not use computers because they do not know English. Now, if we make available BBS Hindi office, and then BBS, shall we say, equivalent of InDesign or PageMaker for a DTP job, a data processing job, and a BBS version in the open source of CAD, AutoCAD, which is very expensive for all these carpenters and people like that, they would start using computers immediately. Government of India is ready to spend millions of rupees or several thousand crores of rupees in skilling. They need to skill people who are in the earning age group of, shall we say, 25 to 40. And if you can train them with computers, modern technologies, even today in the budget, the finance minister mentioned about skilling. If they could use, Hindi language computing tools and train these people, then they would become world class. For example, when IKEA wanted to come to India, government of India said that you need to buy at least 30% from our people. Now, it's not that IKEA does not want to buy from our people. They had a big problem. Similarly, Apple also was, waiting for a very long while to come into India, mainly because of this condition that you need to buy locally. Why don't they buy locally? Because our people are not as good as their counterparts in Korea, Taiwan, and other countries, because they have upgraded their skills. The artisans, the vocationists have upgraded their skills. Now, the beauty here is that once we get these people in the 25 to 40 age group start to use computers in Indian languages, then they will be able to understand that if they can send their children to for higher learning in engineering and medicine and law and other courses in Indian languages, they would do just fine. That is how you will be breaking the narrative of English. So it is not only affirmative action, yes, but the government needs to spend enormous time and energy in training people in the vocations.
So this has been a wonderful conversation. It's an introductory level conversation to bring to light the problem and what all is being done. And I'm very glad all this is happening. It's been many years since we started doing these things together. And one of the first projects you did, unfortunately, funding was not available. You took our History of Indian Science and Technology books, and you took 5 of the volumes and you put your own money to get them translated into Marathi. And this was done the manual way. Of course, it was very expensive, and we learned our lessons. And then I remember going to get some funding from the Maharashtra Education Ministry, from the media people, from the Indian government people. Nobody funding any of this. They are very happy. They'll come for a ribbon cutting ceremony and praise, but they're not going to put government money. It's not even their own personal money. I would have thought they should have done it to send a message across that this is the future. But I remember you struggling, and you put in a lot of your own money, and we are a tiny non-profit, and we got this as a kind of a gift, but you didn't recover the investment that could have allowed you to reinvest in more translations. But out of adversity comes breakthroughs. So out of the adversity, because that was very labor intensive, done by human beings, comes the idea that why don't we automate this translation? So in a sense, all those years were not wasted, because you learned the hard way how to do, how not to do, and so many years of persistence. And now you have a company, and I wish you well, and I hope more people who are listening will want to fund your company, because you need funding, and you're an investment manager, investment banker. And if the investment banker can't raise money for his own company, then it means that the country needs to wake up and get their priorities right. So I would hope that the government will fund you, but without strings attached. So with that, let's bring this to closure. And I want to thank you for coming. And I want all the listeners to pay attention to the message. This is very important for India's development and for fighting the caste system. This is very important, because you've got to fight the language caste system. And you've got to fight by creating a supply of Indian language textbooks, and create a demand by pressuring the government to create quota system, and not quota system necessarily by force, but incentives, financial incentives, tax breaks, and so on, to hire people who are using Indian languages, and that will break the caste system far more than all this current activism going on. So any final thoughts, Ganesh, and then we close.
The final thoughts would be, in addition to the point that you made just now, I would earnestly request the government to consider skilling people in use of these tools, so that two things will happen. One, those in the 25 to 40-year group will become world-class, blue-collar workers comparable to Taiwan and other countries. That would give a big economic boost to India's manufacturing capabilities. And second, it will break the narrative that if you do not know English, you cannot make progress. Once that narrative is broken by self-experience of these 25 to 40-year-old people, then they will be sending their children willingly to learn and to study in Indian languages. So that Wonderful. Would be my final thoughts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for all of you guys for listening. And thank you, Ganesh. And we'll have some more conversations. I'm coming to Mumbai in March and look forward to seeing you.
Namaste. Thank you, Ji.
Namaste.